have it. So welcome everyone for the next, let's say, 40 minutes. I'm going to share with you the main challenges that tech leads consistently bring in coaching and training sessions. So very quickly, a little bit about me. I've been in tech for more than 12 years now. I started as a software engineer, then moved in different roles, software consultant, tech lead, engineering manager, product director at some point. But my main focus for the past 5 years has been training and coaching techies in building their soft skills, particularly tech leads and building high-performing teams. So I work with a number of companies in different environments with different cultures. So the learnings that I'm going to share with you today are coming from that experience. I want to start by sharing with you the definition of the tech lead. So the tech lead is a software engineer responsible for leading a technical team and accountable for the technical deliverables of that team. Now, why is it important for me to start with this definition? It's because there are so many definitions out there on what the tech lead is. Depending on who you're talking to, you're going to get different answers. I'm always surprised on how, even talking with people in the same company, I hear different responses when I ask them, okay, so what are the expectations from a tech lead? I'm just curious, do we have any tech leads in the room? Can you raise your hand? Only, oh, I see a number. Perfect, thank you so much. Don't worry, it's very relevant, even for the ones that you're not a tech lead. You can learn a lot about the challenges that you might face at some point. So yes, there are a lot of definitions out there on what this tech lead actually is. This might even change, like this is based on all of this experience that I had and talking with so many companies, and this seems to be the one that everybody seems to agree with. But I heard the other day that the tech lead is just gonna be an agent orchestrator. So this might change. But for now, and for the sake of this presentation, and I'm referring to the tech lead, this is what I'm referring to. So this confusion around the role and what exactly it's doing and what are the responsibilities that come with the role, of course, makes tech leads constantly think about what exactly do they expect from me. Which brings us to the first challenge that they consistently bring in coaching session, especially, which is, am I doing a good job? Am I a good tech lead? So this particular tech lead came to me some months ago, and he said, look, I'm very worried. I'm not sure actually if I'm doing a good job. I feel like I'm everywhere, but really not sure if I'm fulfilling all the responsibilities and all the expectations that people have from me. So in order to tackle this, we started by understanding exactly how does he defines being a good tech lead. Like, what does it mean for him? What are the expectations that he has from himself in that role, in that company at that point? Then we looked at the expectations that the people around had on him. So I asked him to go and get feedback, to get information from the managers and from his team and from the stakeholders that were willing to talk to him and share their view on exactly what is it that you expect from me. And then also looking at the job description. So I know this sounds very straightforward, but I'm only surprised on how people don't read the job description in their company for like years. Sometimes it doesn't even exist. Yes, that also happens very often. So once he got clarity on what exactly, like getting an overview over all of these different expectations that are out there, he realized that a lot of those weren't aligned between themselves or between the ones that he had and the ones that they had. So the next step was to go back and make sure that he aligns the expectations. So for example, it's very common for junior developers to expect the tech lead to take all the technical decisions, right? They see the tech lead as the person that has the most knowledge, which very often happens that the best programmer in the team is promoted to the tech lead role. And so in this case, this tech lead, this was not the way he wanted to run things. He wanted a collaborative environment. He wanted everyone to contribute. So him making decisions for the team wasn't really the way to go. And so he had to go back to all of these people and kind of make sure he explains and aligns everyone on, okay, so this is exactly what you can expect from me and how do I plan to run things, just to avoid disappointment in the future. The next step was him assessing himself on all the areas. Like once the expectations were clear, like just we did a quick 1 to 10 scale assessment on, okay, where do you think you are and why is that? You can use different things, but this was kind of just the easiest. And then I asked him to also get feedback from all his stakeholders and his team and all the people around product, and just kind of getting feedback, okay, how do you think I'm doing in all of these different areas that they are expected from me? Now, after reviewing all of this data, the conclusion he came up with is that he was doing a pretty good job, surprisingly. Now, this is not the outcome that we always get. So it depending on the context, depending on the person. Sometimes, very often, people out of this process, they get like gaps, or they identify areas that they need to focus on, that they need to improve, which is a great way to move forward. But the learning that I want you to take out of this story is that if you're not sure if you're doing a good job as a leader, as an engineer, as a professional, just ask for feedback. At the end of the day, when we think about growth, and the way I define growth, I think about impact. Like, how does your behavior, how does the things that you are doing impact the people around you? How many people impact, and how does your behavior gets to them? So if you really want to know if you're doing a good job, just ask people around you. The second challenge that tech leads constantly bring is dealing with their time. Of course, this inconsistency in what exactly a tech lead is makes a lot of tech leads, especially the one they are just starting out, to try to fit into everyone's expectations, right? So they just try to do everything. They are all over the place. They are like working a lot of overtime, and they are all constantly feeling like they're running out of time and nothing gets done. So I have a particular case in which this tech lead came to me and she told me, well, I have no time for strategic work. And the reason why this was a problem is because her manager came to her and and told her that you're doing a really great job on the day-to-day, but you should be putting more effort in planning ahead for your team, identifying issues, and just kind of like overseeing what's going to happen, and put some more thought process into it. So in order to tackle this, we started by looking at all the things that she was taking care of. At the first hand, things sounded very straightforward, like managing stakeholder, managing like different cross-team team initiatives, doing some coding alongside the team, managing the backlog together with product. But then some red flags started to pop up for me. And that is that she was facilitating all team meetings. She was driving all the one-on-ones. She was running and owning like all the growth plans for all the different individuals in her team. And also running all the showcases, onboarding. So basically, yeah, doing everything for her team, and her team relied on her for everything. So in order to approach this, I asked her to identify some activities that she could share with her team. And after a lot of debates and conversation, she managed to identify the yellow ones that you can see here, that she felt comfortable with starting to explore sharing with her team. So then I asked her to pick one place, one initiative, one responsibility that we can start exploring and experimenting with. The one she picked was the one-on-ones. So just for context, she was spending a lot of time getting ready for these one-on-ones. She would review notes. She would look at their growth plans. She would just make sure that each individual it's covered, that they have what to talk about, that it's interesting, that it's relevant. When the point of one-on-ones is that you show up for the people in your team, for your team members, and you are there to support them. And they are the ones that have to make the most out of these one-on-ones for their growth. So in order to switch this one-on-one agenda ownership back to her team members instead of her owning everything, we started by her going back to her team and saying, well, I'm not bringing topics anymore. You will have to bring topics. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I'm not doing it anymore. Second, that's this. Oh, it doesn't work anymore. What happened? Oh, okay, it's working. The second step was using the time. So, I mean, going and setting the expectations worked for some people. They came in the next one-on-ones and they had things to discuss, but for some didn't. So for the one that didn't, I encourage her to use that space to discuss, okay, why there are no topics. Is it a trust problem? Is it a I don't know what to talk about problem? Like, what exactly is it? So she identified a common theme, which is they had no idea on what and how would be useful for them to bring up in those conversations. So in order to come with ideas to share with them, I asked her, okay, what are the topics that the people that actually came prepared brought to you? Like, what did they want to talk about? And the recurrent topic was things around individual growth. So how can I go to the next level? How can I develop this particular skill? And then she brought this to all the other people that were consistently like, that didn't know exactly what to talk about. And she used the one-on-ones to help people grow, which led to taking another responsibility out of her plate, and that is basically supporting the growth instead of driving their growth, right? So instead of her making the growth plans and being blamed for when things were not going in the right direction, just going in the support role and allowing people to own those processes, and just her being there to identify opportunities and find options for them to help them grow, but not owning that process for them. So by this time, our coaching relationship ended, but she already had more time in her calendar. She started blocking some time, and started thinking about, okay, what are we gonna be working next? Thinking about some risks, but she also felt less pressure. By this time, she was already eliminating things from her plate, and she understood a very key lesson, which is going to help her basically start handing over a lot of more of these things. And that learning is that you as a tech lead, you're accountable for making sure that all of these things get done, but the whole team is responsible. So you have to learn how to bring your team into the journey and rely on them, and build together instead of just you running everything. The third struggle, well, this is usually comes together with the time management one, because usually people that struggle to say no struggle with time management. Let's see, I'm curious if you're willing to share and raise your hand if you struggled in the past or you're currently struggling with saying no. Okay, I see a couple of hands. Thank you so much. So yeah, it's a common thing, especially in overachievers, people that really want to help and be there for their teams in different roles. So this particular client, she came to me and she said, look, I really struggle to push back and to say no to people. The problem is that I just feel like my day is being run by someone else's agenda. I feel like everyone else's problems gets done minus my priorities. So in order to tackle this, we started by looking on, okay, what is important for you now? What are your priorities? Putting that down on paper. And then, what happens? Okay. And then I encourage her to use the time, like basically to start pushing back and just saying, look, every time someone comes to you with a request, no matter how big or how small, just ask them and tell them, look, I'm going to come back to you. Let me think about it. Let me just give me some time, and I'm gonna come back to you. So the idea was for her to not say yes on the spot anymore, and get a little bit into that uncomfortable space of it's okay to say no. So by the time she started doing this, she already started seeing the results, because by getting some time, just by not responding immediately or making their request a priority, she saw first that nothing bad happens. Like, people were not reacting very aggressively to the fact that she was just saying, okay, let me think about it. And second, she realized that most of the time when she was going back to people, they already solved their problem by the time she came back. So it's like there were other ways for them to solve the issue without relying on her. So the next thing that we did is I encouraged her to use the time, that let me think about it time, to take the requests every time there is a request coming in, from an external request coming in, to evaluate that against her priorities. Like, how is this going to affect the things that I need to focus on right now? What needs to be deprioritized? What does this actually means, and how is going to impact me? Then thinking about, okay, why would you say yes to this request? Is it because it's in your responsibility, or is just because you're trying to be nice, or just because you're just feeling like you should be available and reply to everyone's request? So just kind of spending some time in that thought process can really make a difference. And the third one is actually thinking about what happens if you say no. So just kind of exploring that space in which what are other options that you can still support them with their problem without you being the one jumping in, or without you being the one doing the work. So in this case, she came up with some great ideas, like pairing that person with another one that can help them, or sending them like some resources, like just you get creative the moment when you ask the right questions. So the learning here is that you need to have your priorities clear, and you need to defend those priorities, because at the end of the day, everybody else is. So you might as well have to learn to kind of stick up for yourself also. And this is going to be in your benefit, but also in your team benefits, because usually tech leads that are very helpful and always there and always answer all the questions, they get their teams very comfortable with them doing that. So they get very comfortable in not trying too hard anymore, right? So just like instead of trying to get the answers or trying to look up for answers somewhere else, they just go always to this tech lead, and they just rely on them to give them the answer. So have your priorities clear, and make sure you constantly iterate over them, because they change, and they're going to help you to push back and stray and say no to things. The next challenge is people struggling to give constructive feedback. And when I mean constructive feedback, because I know there is a debate around it, I mean improvement feedback, like, okay, what do you need to change in your behavior? So this challenge comes in different forms. Sometimes tech leads come to me and tell me, I have no feedback to give. I'm not sure exactly what to tell them. Like, I know I should be giving feedback, but I really don't know. Usually that's a matter of just refocusing on addressing this challenge. So here in this case, we look at things like how to pay attention to things that are happening for a certain individual in meetings, and just kind of noticing how they're behaving. Maybe they do a presentation, just kind of seeing what they're doing, and actually being intentional about trying to get information that can help you and you can provide to help this person grow. Keeping notes and tracking notes on your one-on-ones and on different conversations can really help, or sometimes even reviewing what happened in this past week and how this individual was involved in that can already give you some ideas on things that you can share. There is always feedback. Honestly, there is always feedback. It's just a question if you're willing enough to put the intention in there and the time and the effort to find it. Sometimes this challenge comes in, I don't know how to give feedback, and then we look at things like proper preparation and doing some, like we do some role playing in our conversations, and kind of just preparing them for it. We look at the right timing to deliver the feedback, or we use tools like SBI. Let's see, who here knows what SBI is? No one? Okay, I see some hands. Perfect, thank you. So it's basically a framework to deliver feedback, which is based on situation, behavior, and impact. I find that techies love this kind of frameworks, make things way easier to structure your communication and your message, and it reduces a lot the chance of people being aggressive or defensive when they're receiving the feedback. So if you're interested, just come and ask me, and I can share more about it. But the most common challenge that comes when we're talking about giving constructive feedback is, and this particular client, he came to me and said, I have to deliver this feedback to this individual, but I'm very afraid they're gonna react, let's say, aggressively or defensive, or I'm not gonna know how to handle their behavior. So in order to tackle this, I started by exploring, and we started by exploring together all the scenarios that they were afraid of, particularly the one that they were most afraid of. Okay, so what's the worst thing that you imagine that can happen? By doing this process, he identified that a lot of the scenarios that he had in his head in his head were really unrealistic, like they could not happen in a professional environment. Second, by going deep into the actual cases that maybe there's a possibility that they might happen, he realized he had a lot of options and a lot of ideas on how he might tackle them. So he felt way more comfortable in going and having that conversation. So the learning here that I want to share with you is that in my experience, I see that our brains tend to make the problems bigger than they actually are. So if you're feeling stuck in holding back and giving this constructive feedback, or even sometimes making a decision, what can really make a difference is getting out of your brain. And when you feel like you're spiraling and overthinking and you cannot just move out of it, it can really help for you to write things down. So just putting on paper all the processes that are going through your mind, or talk it over with someone. It would be great if it would be someone that would have like some proper listening skills that can guide you to the conversation, like a mentor or a coach that can really challenge in whatever you're thinking. It really speeds up the decision process. But yeah, just get out of your head, and this is greatly going to help you to move forward. The next challenge, it's around delegation. So when it comes back to that time management, we all know that one solution is to delegate things. It's also a great opportunity to help your team members grow. So yeah, delegation is a big topic when it comes to tech leadership. So this particular client, she came to me and she told me, look, I want to delegate more. I know I have to. I want to get more time for myself, and I want to help my team develop some new skills that I constantly feel like I'm the only one having in the team. But I'm afraid, because the last time that I delegated a task, let's just say it didn't turn out the way I was expecting. So I delegated this technical task to this senior developer in my team. And after 3 weeks, he came with something that was a little bit in line with what I was expecting, but he missed a very key edge case that it was so obvious, and I don't understand how he missed that. So I'm afraid that this is going to happen again. So I asked her, okay, if you are so sure, it sounds to me like you are it was very clear to you that this edge case needs to be taken into consideration. So why didn't you tell him in the beginning of the delegation process that he needs to take this into account? And she told me, well, because he's a senior engineer, he has a lot of experience, he should know this. This is common sense. Well, people, the problem with common sense is that it's not that common. And depending on who you're asking, you're going to get different answers to what the definition of done is, to what good looks like, to what quality looks like. So instead of just kind of assuming that everybody runs, and instead of just running on common sense, you better make sure that that you're aligned on that understanding. So once we left this assumption aside, assuming that, okay, it's common sense and everybody's on the same page, we started working on how we can address the main challenges that come and the main fears that come when we talk about delegation. So in this case, the fears were that the outcome will be different than what I was expected, that the quality will drop if I don't do it myself, or that I will lose all control over how this task is going to be run. So how people usually describe this fear to me is like, I'm going to give this task away, and there's going to be 3 weeks passing, and I'm not going to hear about it. And then this person is going to come back with the outcome, and it's going to be completely different than what I imagined, and I will have nothing to say about it because it's going to be too late. So in order to address all of these challenges, there's a very simple strategy, and it's so straightforward. You probably heard it everywhere, but still people don't do it. And that is setting clear expectations. First, on the outcome, like what do I expect at the end of this delegation process? What are the artifacts that need to be delivered? What are the edge cases that I imagine you're going to tackle? What are the deliverables? Being very explicit about what you have in your head. If you would do it yourself, like what would you expect the outcome to be? Being very clear on the timeline. So I see more and more companies working, like avoiding discussing deadlines. I don't know if you also see this. Like it's kind of, no, we don't tell our developers about deadlines. No, this scares them. They get freaked out, and we don't want to put pressure on anyone. Well, let me break it to you. There's always a deadline. The only thing is if you're talking about it or not. So making it explicit to people in the delegation process on, okay, by when this needs to be delivered, are there any milestones in between that they need to be aware of, is going to reduce, again, a lot of the chance of things going off track and you being disappointed. And last but not least, agreeing on a way on how we're going to work together. And this is the part that most people miss. So when it comes back to that control and people being afraid of not having any space to kind of review and just kind of giving this thing away, also a lot of these tech leads that I talk to, they are very afraid of micromanaging also. So in this case, when they're delegating something, they don't want to go like pitching at people and just kind of, hey, how are you doing? What is the status? Have you been making any progress? Because they're worried about not hearing anything, any feedback. So in this case, she went back in this delegation process and she agreed with the person that she was delegating to that they're gonna meet every week and they're gonna discuss about, okay, how is the task going? Are there any problems? Are there any like risks that they need to discuss? But also this would give her the chance to basically bring up, like jump in if they need to change course or if there's a really big risk, she would feel in control. So by applying all of this process, things change radically. We started like at the beginning with very small tasks and just kind of applying the process, getting trust in the process. But over time, the tasks that she was delegating were getting bigger and bigger. So it worked really great, but the secret is basically here in setting these clear expectations. Now, the learning here is that most problems in tech teams come from people thinking they are on the same page when they actually aren't. Let's see how many people agree with me here. Okay, I see, some are not sure. Probably you haven't feel enough pain yet, but yes, you can trust me on this that usually the most problem comes when you leave the room and you feel like, okay, yeah, we know everybody's on the same page, we know what we have to do, and then you go back into the next retro and no one has done the actions because we never agreed on who's gonna do what, but you just thought your team member is gonna do it. I have this a fun fact. I have this habit that I do as a leader. At the end of each meeting, once everybody agreed, I just share my screen and I open a document. I said, okay, sounds great. Just give me 2 minutes to write this down, whatever I understood that we're gonna do and who's gonna be doing what. So I write it down with everyone in the room. I assign the people who like on the task, and there's always someone in the room that tells me, that's not what I got, which is exactly what I was expecting, because that basically triggers people to share, like, that's not what I'm signing up, that's not what I understood, and then we can have a conversation about exactly what did you got, and making sure we are on the same page. So constantly validate that you are agreeing, and writing things down the way you are understanding makes it's a great strategy to do that. The last challenge that I'm going to share with you today comes from this experience that I had with this startup. So they worked on this initiative, like company-wide initiative. There were like 3 teams involved and 3 tech leads, and it went completely wrong. It took them, they released, but with like 6 months delay, and basically when they tried to integrate, everything blew up, as it usually happens. So my role was to come in and help them troubleshoot exactly what happens there, like when these things got completely out of hands and what they could have done better. So the first question that I asked these 3 tech leads already showed the biggest underlying problem in the process. So I asked them, who owned this initiative? The first tech lead told me, the product manager. The second tech lead told me the engineering manager, and the third one said the CTO, but they weren't really sure. So this underlined a couple of problems. Because there was no clear owner, no one overseeing all the process on the high level, there was no shared timeline whatsoever between these teams. There were no enforced expectations. Each team was basically planning their own individually. So of course, when they tried to integrate, everything blowed up because there was zero coordination on the big picture. So the learning here is that when everybody is responsible, no one is. I'm a true believer of clear ownership. So if you are currently in an initiative, in a project, whatever, and you cannot pinpoint on who's owning this, and when I refer to the owner, it doesn't mean it's the person that is doing all the work. It's the person that makes sure that the work gets done. So if you're thinking about, okay, who owns this, or you're not sure, or you're having double thoughts thinking about it, or you hear different people having different understanding of who owning this, then there's a high risk that this project is going to go off track. So it might be something that you want to look into. So these are the main challenges that tech leads consistently bring up in trainings, in coaching for the past 5 years. Work with over close to 500 now of them. And this keeps coming up, even in the AI area today. So you would think problems change, but surprisingly no. So what looks like new problems, we have things like, this again doesn't work. Okay, let's try again. It's gonna work. Perfect. So what looks like new problems, like how do I find time to learn and keep up with AI, goes back to these unclear expectations on what is my role with AI and how am I supposed to support the team in this progress, goes back to time management and properly re-evaluating your priorities and understanding what you should be focusing next. And of course, comes back to delegation. Everything that is related to time management, also it's related to delegation. Or the CEO opening a PR in a repo in the middle of the night. Apparently, this seems to be a trend these days. So yeah, a lot of tech leads come to me and like, what should I do? How do I handle this conversation? Well, this challenge goes back to the ability to say no, to push back, to give this feedback in regards to how you're feeling and how you think, and having the conversation on how things should happen. And basically, it's definitely a sign of a clear lack of alignment on how we should be dealing with this situation and how we should be integrating this in our processes if it's something that we want to do. Or there is a high pressure these days, especially with AI, for teams to deliver faster. A tech lead came to me the other day and he told me, well, my manager came to me and said, I just got your team 5 cloud licenses. Now you should be going way faster. I expect you to deliver 3 times earlier this initiative than we had initially planned. And he was scared and he was like, what am I gonna do? Because this is not how things work. We also need an onboarding phase into the tools and everything. So the main thing here is that this also shows a very clear lack of alignment and ownership on, okay, what we should be doing this. What does it mean being faster? What does it mean still having quality? How is this affecting our ways of working processes? And yeah, a lack of proper communication and agreement on that. So the learnings, the good part is that whatever, if it looks like new problems or old problems, the same strategies of tackling them apply. The first one being gather feedback constantly. If you want to know how you're doing, if you're doing any changes or any process in your team, outside of your team, the only way to really know if whatever you're trying to do is working is if you ask people around you, especially as a leader. Your perspective on how you're doing, your gut feeling, it's only one very small variable in that process, because at the end of the day, as a leader, your definition of success relies heavily on how your behavior is being, how it impacts the people around you. So the only way to know if you're doing a good job is to ask constantly the people around you. The second strategy is to consistently share the responsibility with your team. So learn how to rely on your team, how to bring them in conversations. I can tell you that actually the more you have, the earlier you involve your engineering team and everyone in the process of the decision making, so from the starting of a project, the higher the motivation and the commitment people have. Because especially when it comes to decision making, people that were there part of the decision making process, they are way more committed because they felt like, okay, I made this decision, I agree to it. It's way harder to just push back and say, no, this is not something that I want to be doing. So it's actually a secret. And I know there's gonna be some friction and people are like, yeah, but it's gonna be more conversation. But in the long run, you're reducing the friction that is happening later in the process. The third one, have your priorities clear and constantly reiterate over them and make sure you're focusing on what's important for you, for your team, because especially as a leader, people are going to go all over that and things are going to change from one day to another. So it's important for you to be able to stick to what you think is important right now and what has the highest impact. Learn to give feedback, not just constructive improvement feedback, but also positive feedback. I actually think this is one of the reasons that people struggle so much with constructive or improvement feedback. It's because they only give improvement feedback. So then the idea of feedback is directly associated with something bad, something that I have to improve, something that I have to work on. Now imagine if you would incorporate the positive feedback in your culture, in your daily culture, right? So if you would also tell people, hey, how good of a job you're doing, and in every feedback conversation, you would have also the part of what I appreciate and what are you doing right. Now imagine how that would change, because then that would open the space for having conversation consistently and would lead the intention towards just helping people do better, not just telling you what you're doing wrong. Make expectations explicit no matter how clear you think you are. Just constantly reiterate over it. You know, there are studies on it. It's not me coming up with it, but at the base of high-performing teams, there is over-communication. Actually, the best performing team that I was part of, we applied this over-communication strategy. And it can be annoying. Like, even in my team, people complain, why do you have to repeat things so many times? Well, because it works. Because when you're not afraid of asking the question because you should know the answer already, people feel way more comfortable to continuously learn and continuously having the right conversations. And last but not least, constantly validate that you are on the same page. Now, all of these learnings and all of this experience and everything that I heard today in these earlier talks and everything that I keep reading keep getting me to the same conclusion over and over again. And that is that most tech problems are people problems. So if you wanna, even in the AI area, I can promise you that. So if you wanna tackle the tech problems, you have to look at the people behind them. All of these learnings and all of these strategies that I shared with you, I cover them in depth in my recently released book with O'Reilly, Leveling Up as a Tech Lead, which I have 2 copies of here for the first 2 ones that are going to ask me questions. It's also signed, so it's a nice extra. So yeah, thank you very much. That's it. Any questions?
In your interactions with the tech leads, what is the question that you felt was never asked? What is the problem that they have not expressed, but you were seeing it already?
Whew, very good question. The problem that they never asked. Well, I think every problem that is being brought to me, it's never brought on the real, like they don't say it with their own words. So all the things that I shared with you today actually didn't came up directly. Like, people don't come to me and tell me, oh, well, I have an ownership problem. They're like, I have this problem, I have this project that is getting delayed or that is getting completely sidetracked. So it actually takes a number of conversation and digging into to get to the underlying issue. So what I shared with you today is basically here it's already filtered process and information. But if I have to think about like one thing that I think people struggle with and they don't like tech leads struggle with and they then don't continue, they don't bring up as often. I think it's their fear of not being good enough. So I think I see this a lot, like when it comes to all of these things, like saying no or pushing back or giving feedback. I think the underlying fear, and again, something that no one comes to actually say it, is that they are afraid that who am I to kind of challenge people on these topics, and do I actually have enough knowledge to be going around? And so there's a lot of self-doubt happening especially in the tech lead space, and it's a lot related to that lack of feedback, but also that lack of clear clarity on what is expected from people. Yeah, did I answer your question? Awesome. Who's next? Go.
I have a question regarding, do you have any special tips for tech leads who are in a team which is remote and or working in different cultures, so in different countries, different cultures then might clash, right? So you have any thoughts and tips on that?
Yes. Actually, a number of teams that I was part of, I was leading, and a lot of tech leads that I work with, they are in exactly that situation, especially these days with the remote environment and people like moving all over. It's very common that you have a very cross-functional team, people from all over the world, like from different cultures. So some tips that makes it easier. I guess the first one, it comes back to that over communication, especially when you have so many like dynamics and so many different like say perspectives in the team. I think having that proper like constant over communication where people can ask questions, and it really helps to build that psychological safety, because in the end, in order to have a high performing team, you need that psychological safety. And that over communication, constantly repeating on what are we doing, why are we doing what, and answering those stupid questions that you should know the answer to over and over again, really contribute to creating that space. Second, it's consistent and transparent communication. So I'm a fan of documenting things, as I told you the example with like just at the end of the meeting taking the document and writing things down. I just feel there is something about having something written that kind of creates as a non-verbal contract, that just because you read that and you agree to it, it's kind of you're committed to it, even if you don't sign anything. So that's like transparent communication where everybody has access to the information and to the decisions and all the conversations that were happening in the process of making those decisions. And third, the consistent communication. So even in the remote environment, the teams that I was leading, we always had consistent communication through, of course, you have different channels, but I think having those recurrent progress meetings, like, okay, where we are, what are we doing, are we on track, and kind of being I was always very transparent with my team if there was a problem, if there was pressure coming from stakeholders. I think it really helps to connect the engineering team with the business and everything that is happening. So kind of acting as a channel of information instead as a blocker between it. So yeah, this is what I would say: over communication, consistent communication, and transparent communication. Other questions?
Thank you for the presentation. All of the points are kind of assuming that the person was rightfully assigned or promoted to the role. But have you had cases when like the person should not be a tech lead? And if so, how do you identify?
What do you mean they should not be a tech lead?
It means they would be more successful as a individual contributor working on what they were assigned or what they identified, and that's it.
Yes. Actually, I was working for a company that they promoted, or they just created this tech lead in their company. They didn't have it before, and as usually happens, they just took the most high performant engineer in each team and they promoted them to the tech lead role. Now, things, and so they brought me in to help them grow because they were struggling, as you would expect. Because they all of a sudden had all of these new responsibilities. Wasn't just the tech that they were used to, but they also had to do people management and performance reviews and feedback and tracking and alignment and stakeholder management. So yes, I had these cases. What very often happens is that in my coaching sessions, I would have conversations with them and trying to understand if they really want to be there. So the outcome was that with some of those tech leads, they actually realized that this is not for them, and they switched back to engineering. At the same time, I was discussing with stakeholders because I had like their ear, and I was able to kind of facilitate that process for them of transition. So they actually kept their salary increase, and they were able to switch back to the position before. And they promoted other people that were more interested in handling this people side in those roles. So I guess coming back to your point, yes, it happens very often that tech leads are being told that they are a tech lead and they don't want to be there. I've seen people grow into the role. So some people are like, I really want to give it a try. I want to try to develop those skills. So we start building a strategy for doing that. But yeah, some realize in the process that it's not for them. But I also think the only way to really know is if you try it. So if you're not sure, try it.
Thank you.
Anyone
Other
else?
questions? Sorry. Come on, we have time for one more because I speak a lot, as I don't realize. Thank you. Right, we have one more question.
As a team lead, sometimes what I have, and I want to be very open to the whole team. What am I doing and what are they doing? So basically this over communication. One of the problems that I always struggled with was the competing lists of to-dos. So for instance, we always have like, okay, this is the work, right? And then you have another list which you create when someone from another team says, let's discuss this. There's another team which is the whole support, which is other teams. There's a new team, there's a new list that's created that every time you do a review of something or so all these things tend to go into different documents or in different programs. Now it's easier these days because you can basically use the MCP tools, bring everything together, try to put them in a certain order. But for me in the past, this was a problem because I forgot about things that I said to someone until they had to tell it to me. How do you solve this?
Well, I have to tell you the answer, it depends. So what I found is that each individual tech lead kind of solved these problems in a way that worked for them. So for me particularly, I'm very structured. So I would just have a place where I would keep all of these different lists and I would consistently review them and kind of making my own list of priorities. But I've seen tech leads that they would just get things off their plate. So a very good way of kind of freeing things up from your plate is delegating entire initiatives. So one of those lists, like collaborating with a certain team on a certain initiative, you can delegate that to someone in your team, and there are these roles like feature lead, and then they can take all of that to-do list and deal with it. So that's another way. But also there's a very cool strategy that I've seen working with especially tech leads that struggle with this time management, which is creating of I will not worry about it right now list. So one thing that I've noticed is that yes, you have all of these lists, but what actually is gonna get done? So you look at this list and there's all these things that you think, yeah, they will be nice, but I know I'm not gonna get to them. So basically cleaning up and putting this into I will not take care of it for now really helps freeing that mental space and kind of making a constant decision on what actually you're gonna be focusing on. So yeah, there are different strategies for different individuals, and I think everyone kind of have to find their own way. But constantly re-evaluating, okay, what's important, and finding ways to bring the team, like delegating or bringing them into the process, can reduce a lot the overload and in the management of this list. Yeah, does this helps? You're not sure? We can talk a little bit more after, because I'm out of time. That's why I have to wrap it up. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.